U.S. Transhumanist Party, Chief Executive of the Nevada Transhumanist Party. It's Gennady Stolyarov II. Happy birthday, sir. I hope you had a great birthday, and you'll have so many more to come, it's not even funny.
Yes, indeed. Well, I hope to live indefinitely and help advance the arrival of the technologies of biomedical life extension so that they come in time for me, in time for you, in time for several of the previous generations, I hope, so that by the time they reach us, they will be refined. But thank you for your good wishes.
No problem. You're a strong advocate of life extension, radical life extension, and we thank you for your service. So before we get into this, can you explain to everybody what the clock means below you? Because the clock is very important.
Yes, indeed. So this clock is a countdown to the deadline for membership registration in the United States Transhumanist Party for those who wish to vote in our upcoming presidential primary. Our presidential primary will be held between August 11th and 17th during a 7-day electronic voting period where anyone who has registered as a member prior to and including August 10th, 2019, would be able to participate in that vote. So I would encourage everyone watching this show to register for free as a member of the U.S. Transhumanist Party by August 10th.
And we'll be going through the registration steps very shortly, but we'll just run through some housekeeping first. So very quickly, how was your chat with Jim Stroll from People Unlimited and Radfest? That looked like an incredibly energizing interview.
Yes, indeed. So Jim Stroll has been an advocate of radical life extension for many decades, since 1972. So now he has been doing this for over 4.5 decades. He works with an organization called People Unlimited, and he is also one of the leaders of the Coalition for Radical Life Extension, which puts on Radfest. Radfest is going to be in its 4th year between October 3rd and October 6th of 2019 in Las Vegas. And Las Vegas will be a new venue for Radfest. So we discussed some of the advantages of that new venue. We also discussed some of the content that will be presented at Radfest. And then we discussed the need for all supporters of life extension and all transhumanists to essentially become a unified community. So we still have certain intellectual differences, philosophical differences, and that is fine, but we need to recognize that we have a shared effort here in overcoming disease and death and convincing the general culture that lengthening human lifespans dramatically is an urgent and crucial imperative.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's unfortunate for people like us out here in the far-flung territories of the world who don't get access to Radfest and things like that. So we hope that people closer to the scene can take advantage of that, because people who would like to go to these things, we can't. So that's good. But we do have the Singularity University coming over here. Peter Zing, amongst others, are sponsoring it and going to it, and I myself will try and get along to it. So that's encouraging that there are some aspects of that. So Peter Stroll is doing a great job with that. So big news in your world is the ebook. Let's talk about the ebook. That's the Transhumanist ebook, the first edition, 2019, by Newton Lee. Tell us about the ebook.
So the Transhumanism Handbook is actually available both in electronic form and in hard copy form. It is published by Springer Nature, which is a major academic publisher. It is edited by Newton Lee, who is the education and media advisor to the United States Transhumanist Party and also the chairman of the California Transhumanist Party, a very prominent advocate for transhumanism, longevity, and improving human quality of life. So Newton Lee has spearheaded this effort and has gathered a large number of authors, essentially a representative cross section of the transhumanist movement. This book has 66 chapters, 847 pages of in depth content on essentially all of the major subject areas that transhumanism is commonly seen as encompassing. For instance, artificial intelligence, life extension, discussions about transhumanist philosophy, transhumanist aesthetics, a variety of other emerging technologies. And this book is intended to be a bit of a multimedia experience as well, in that some of the chapters contain visuals. There are chapters about art that contain images and color of the artworks being discussed. And this book, I would say, is a master compendium of the current state of transhumanist thought. And transhumanist politics features prominently in this compendium. At the onset, there are several chapters that cover the subject in a great deal of detail. My own chapter is chapter 5, called The United States Transhumanist Party and the Politics of Abundance. This chapter comprises 60 pages of the book, and actually I have chosen to release this chapter free of charge to the public. One can go to the US Transhumanist Party website at transhumanist-party.org and find the United States Transhumanist Party and the Politics of Abundance downloaded for free. What I do in this chapter is provide a history of the US Transhumanist Party through the end of 2018, as well as the principles underlying its vision and both shorter term and longer term objectives that the Transhumanist Party has.
Yeah, and it's really important because people understand that transhumanism, yes, it's about super longevity and all these other things, but it's also about overcoming scarcity, because the
Yes.
world is scarce, and that's what you focus on. This abundance of resources that people don't really understand, because the universe is sort of finite, and so people always have a sort of finite mindset, if you know what I mean. So you focus on that, right?
Yes, indeed. So, unfortunately, human minds have this evolutionary flaw because humans evolved during times of fairly severe resource scarcity. A lot of human thought tendencies incline toward this zero-sum mentality, where the idea is there's only so much to go around, so take what you can, but for one person to win, another person has to lose. And unfortunately, even though technology has improved to the point where we can have universal abundance for everybody, and even today, most people lead fairly decent standards of living, this atavistic mentality, this zero-sum, winner-take-all type of thinking, unfortunately, is quite prevalent in contemporary politics. And various political tribes, political factions, essentially have utilized this mentality in order to inflict a lot of damage. We see this a lot in American politics, for instance, where two large-scale tribes have formed, the red tribe and the blue tribe, if you would like to call them that. And these tribes essentially adopt a totalistic ideology, which states you have to agree with them on every little particular, and if you don't, then you're classed as the enemy, you're classed as a member of the other tribe, even though you may have your own individual nuanced perspective on a wide variety of issues. And even though the positions espoused by the red tribe and the blue tribe are by no means logically necessary, they're essentially haphazard assemblages of stances on a variety of issues where one could easily conceive of a different combination. So the alternative to this is what I call the politics of abundance, the recognition that technology combined with reason and morality can craft constructive win-win solutions for everybody. And no matter what set of reasonable values or priorities one might hold, the future advancement of technology could help one reach those goals much more effectively than fighting with other political tribes. So essentially, the Transhumanist Party strives to transcend these partisan divisions, to be transpartisan in the sense that we do believe technology can benefit everybody, and we do believe we need a radically new way of thinking to overcome today's social and political and material problems.
Yeah, your abstract says the depredations of contemporary politics and the majority of our era's social problems stem from scarcity of material resources and time. However, numerous emerging technologies on the horizon promise to dramatically lift the present-day constraints of scarcity. The United States Transhumanist Party, in advocating for accelerated development of these technologies and seeking to influence public opinion to embrace them, is forging a new political paradigm rooted in abundance rather than scarcity. This new approach is simultaneously more ambitious and more civil than the status quo. Here I illustrate the distinguishing features of the Transhumanist Party's mode of operation, achievements, and plans for the future. That's what I was going to say. Actually, you said it there, mode of operation. I was thinking modus operandi of the whole why, because it's kind of interesting with your persona why you would choose to run a party which is so politically divisive, but here you lay out your thesis on why that's an important vehicle of operation. So well done on that.
Yes, thank you. And I would add, subsequent to my experiences of the US political scene earlier during this decade and heading into the 2016 election season, probably if it weren't for the Transhumanist Party, I would have become entirely apolitical because I would have seen no hope in contemporary politics to resolve these predicaments that afflict the human species. But I think with the Transhumanist Party, we can truly construct a better alternative, and we do strive to embody it in the way the Transhumanist Party conducts itself as well.
So let's move on to a part of the conversation that's very important that people are asking about all over the place, and that's questions about signing up to the Transhumanist Party, because people want to sign up, they're desperate to sign up, they're all over it, they're inboxing me all the time saying, how do I sign up to this thing? But they've got a whole bunch of questions. So let's make this a semi-comprehensive guide. Obviously, it can't be the most comprehensive guide, but it'll be a video guide to people who are interested in this. And I'm gonna demonstrate it here on screen. But while I'm doing that, can you please answer some questions that people have? So, for example, a question would be, I'm already a member of a political party in my own country. Can I still become a member of the Transhumanist Party in the United States?
Yes, absolutely you can. Membership in any other political party does not conflict with membership in the Transhumanist Party. We strive to be as inclusive as possible, meaning you really are able to hold any other set of political beliefs that you would like, as long as you agree with our 3 core ideals, which are listed in our membership application as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you explain to the people what an allied member is?
Yes. So an allied member is any individual who is not eligible to vote in United States elections. However, that individual may still become a member for free of the United States Transhumanist Party and participate in our internal deliberations and our internal votes. Those votes may relate to planks within the US Transhumanist Party platform or documents like the Transhumanist Bill of Rights, which you showed earlier, as well as endorsements of candidates who may be seeking to run for office in US elections. Now, being an allied member does not render one eligible to actually vote in the general elections in the United States. However, one can participate in our internal process regarding which candidates we would essentially give our approval and our support to. So if you go to transhumanist-party.org/membership. You can see here on the screen the free membership application that one can fill out in less than a minute. Essentially, there's minimal detail requested, a name and email address, this question of whether one is eligible to vote in any United States elections. And if you click no, then you would be an allied member. If you click yes, you would be a United States member. Again, that only affects whether you're eligible to vote in the official US general elections, but for purposes of internal consultation of your opinion about what we should do as the Transhumanist Party, you would still have full rights as an allied member. And then we have our three core ideals, the key values that the Transhumanist Party supports. And these are phrased to be as broad and inclusive as possible. You can see the Transhumanist Party supports significant life extension achieved through the progress of science and technology. The Transhumanist Party supports a cultural, societal, and political atmosphere informed and animated by reason, science, and secular values. And the Transhumanist Party supports efforts to use science, technology, and rational discourse to reduce and eliminate various existential risks to the human species. So if you agree with those core ideals and you click yes, then you would become eligible to vote in internal US Transhumanist Party elections. If you click no, I would probably follow up with you and ask you what you disagree with and why, and attempt to identify whether the set of views that you espouse would still render you transhumanist enough that we could nonetheless render you eligible to vote. And these core ideals were phrased to be maximally inclusive, so they could accommodate a variety of particular perspectives on transhumanism and emerging technologies. Essentially, what they're meant to filter out are techno-Luddites, people who think that death at 50 is a good thing, or people who think that technological progress should be halted in all cases. But if you're not one of those individuals, if you think there's a potential for the constructive use of technology to improve the human condition, then we would be happy to have your voice and your input within the Transhumanist Party.
Absolutely. So, what if I'm really engaged? Can I start one of these parties in my own country?
You can, and if you do, we would be happy to ally with your party. So you can go to the States and Allies tab at the top bar of our website, and you can see we have a list of state parties, and below that we have a list of allied organizations. And these allied organizations can be businesses, they can be nonprofits, or they can be political parties in other countries that espouse similar views to our own. And please reach out if you've founded another political party. Once again, there's no mutual exclusivity here between the US Transhumanist Party and membership in any other political party in any other country. So we'd be happy to include you on our list of allied organizations if you do this. You can see at the bottom, Transhumanism Australia, which is one of the leading advocacy organizations in Australia for emerging technologies, is one of our allied organizations.
That's fantastic. So, why become a member apart from getting some of these little gimmicks that you offer?
Yes, so becoming a member comes with voting privileges, and those are, I would say, the most important in that you get to determine the course of transhumanist politics. And your vote counts a lot more than your vote would in virtually any other context, given that we have right now 1,655 members. So if you cast a vote, it will comprise a statistically significant proportion of the total. And furthermore, because we try to be cosmopolitan, we try to be inclusive, we try to entertain a variety of perspectives, you as a member would be able to propose platform planks, you would be able to make other suggestions regarding our operations that we will take into account. And if they're the kinds of suggestions where multiple perspectives are possible, we would put them to a vote of our members. So I would say the reason to become a member is to have this kind of influence. And really, we seek to be a member-driven organization. So we encourage our members to start their own events. For instance, hold a local meetup, or give a lecture and record it, or submit an article for publication on our website. We welcome all of those contributions, and we would like to essentially see a flourishing of technological, political, cultural advocacy that will help transition us to the next era of our civilization.
And do I have any obligations as an allied member?
As an allied member, you do not have any specific binding obligations, in that you could potentially join and then not take part in our votes, or not contribute any original content. Of course, you're encouraged to engage in those activities. However, you wouldn't be penalized or deprived of your membership if you choose not to, for whatever reason. The only definitive obligation that our members have is to refrain from criminal acts of violence, which they already have an obligation to refrain from in virtually every set of laws that people live under. And this has been stated in our Constitution in order to emphasize we do not advocate political violence for any reason, for any set of beliefs. That way, we distinguish ourselves from some of the militant zealots that have unfortunately infiltrated contemporary politics. For instance, the Antifa, or various, let's say, alt-right militant groups that have arisen in the United States. So we want an alternative of peaceful politics. And as long as our members behave peacefully, they're welcome to remain members at whatever level of activity they choose to engage in.
Have you got anything else final to say on membership that we didn't cover?
Well, I would say this is the easiest political party membership that one can obtain. So I strongly encourage you to do it, especially now at this relatively early stage, when a single person's activities and a single person's input can make a tremendous difference. And there are many individual members of the Transhumanist Party who have already made their mark. You can be one of them. And furthermore, I would encourage as many people to sign up as possible, not just to be able to vote in the upcoming presidential primary, which is going to be a milestone for transhumanist politics, but also so that we can eventually reach 10,000 members. I believe that is the critical threshold for the Transhumanist Party to essentially take on a momentum of its own. Once we reach 10,000 members, we will be so firmly established that the chain of events leading to the transition to the next era of our civilization will be, I think, close to irreversible.
Thank you very much for that. So we've got about 5 minutes left on the clock. So let's just quickly talk about the primaries. They're getting a little bit messy. It's getting close. How are you feeling with the primaries? How are you feeling with the candidates? They're very strong candidates. All of them are very good, solid candidates. I like them all. How are you feeling?
Well, as you know, our candidates have been quite active, and sometimes their discussions, their level of involvement in the process have been quite intense, and this is not always devoid of controversy, but I do hope that with the upcoming debate on Saturday, August 3rd at 3 p.m. U.S. Pacific time, we can have these candidates present some of their views on the campaign process thus far in a more systematic, manner and also answer some challenging questions that a lot of the people who have been following this primary process may be interested in having addressed publicly. Now, I will say that these candidates have all gone into a lot of substance regarding their original policy proposals and how those policy proposals differ from the mainstream in American politics. And whichever of these candidates wins, I think it's important to keep that difference in mind, because wherever one stands on the particular positions within this transhumanist sphere, it's still the case that transhumanists advocate for a radical alternative to the political status quo. So if you look at, for instance, where these candidates stand relative to Andrew Yang, whom they all respect, Andrew Yang, I would say, is the most radical of the mainstream candidates who is running today in how extensively his proposals depart from the status quo. You will see that our Transhumanist Party candidates are even more ambitious in how they perceive technology, how they seek to harness the impact of technology for human well-being. And this is going to be very enlightening to the general public, whichever candidate wins, because the public is going to see a vision of the future and a vision of human and technological potential that most of them have not seen before. And this is what I encourage people to keep in mind. As you follow the process, look at the substance of what each candidate advocates and ask yourself, is this the kind of vision of the future that I can support, that I can advocate to others? Because this is primarily going to be an educational campaign. So ask yourself, which candidate will be able to educate the general public best about what transhumanism promises for the human species and for our future?
Yeah, Andrew Yang is very interesting because he's the only one really talking about anything to do with automation, and automation has a correlation with technology. Elizabeth Warren talking about banks, blaming banks. Bernie Sanders blaming sort of not enough government spending. These candidates have all been covering sort of all of those. I mean, there are three very different platforms. You got Holsopple, who's Mr. Holsopple, who's the 222, and that's a very interesting one. That's a very human-focused, broad, encompassing one in line with the UN sustainability goals. You've got Rachel Haywire, who is all about culture, all about art and culture and influencing art and culture. And then you've got Ben Zion, who is all about really hard edge policies on a range of different issues. Not saying that these others don't have a range of issues, but he emphasizes his diversity of issues, including blockchain technology and other things. So it's very encouraging to see, because what I found on this channel, on this show here, Detonation, and what people are inboxing me is it's like going into the future. We're talking 3 or 4 years into the future, but the mainstream will catch up to us in a few years when people start to realize that their jobs are just not there anymore, and they don't know why. And it's not. And Andrew Yang, he's going to be looked at as a revolutionary before his time, but it's only because the time spans are getting quicker. We're only talking about 2 or 3 years. We're not talking about a 50-year revolutionary who was talking 50 years before their time, Thomas Edison or something like that.
Yes, indeed. And I think you summarized the candidates' outlooks and their styles quite well. So Yohanan Ben Zion clearly has a very policy-intensive focus. Rachel Haywire has a strong cultural and aesthetic focus, and Charles Holsopple has a strong humanitarian focus in his campaign. And I would say all of these are dimensions of transhumanist thinking and areas in which transhumanism can be applied. So I would say to our voters, essentially take your pick in terms of which of these areas do you think it is necessary to have the most influence in during the upcoming election season. And furthermore, I will say we have a distinctive approach to voting in that we employ a ranked preference voting system. So you don't just have to vote for one of the candidates and leave it at that. You can rank order all three of the candidates in your order of preference. So if one of them is your second best choice, you can designate them as your second best choice. If a candidate is your third best choice, but still preferable to none of the above, which is a standard option on our ballots, then you can include three rankings, and we will have an instant runoff process after all of the votes from the first round are tabulated. So the candidate that has the fewest votes will then be eliminated, and their number two votes of the people who supported that candidate will be reassigned to number one rankings. And then that process repeats itself until one of the options has a majority, so 50% plus one vote. And this is done in order to make sure that we avoid any sort of strategic voting. If you participate in our primary, one important idea to keep in mind is it is in your interest to express your genuine preference order. You don't have to think, oh, person X is not likely to win, so I'm going to favor a candidate whom I prefer less, but who has a chance of winning. There is no purpose to doing that with ranked preference voting, because you could say you prefer person X as your first choice and then this other candidate as your second choice. And that is genuinely what you believe. And we want everyone in the political world to vote according to their genuine preferences and not their expectations of what other people will do.
Well, thank you very much for that, Gennady. London's a very busy city, and there's a lot of construction going on out here. That's what all that noise is, if anyone can hear that. So thank you very much. We've run out of time. That's it. So thank you very much for coming back on Detonation. Everybody visit Detonation. More Detonation coming all your way all this week. And thank you very much, Gennady, for highlighting this incredibly important facet of what's going on over there in the United States and globally.
Yes. Thank you very much for having me.
No problem. Detonation.